Hello, everyone. Today is January 5th, 2022. Happy New Year to everybody. This is the Atlanta FileMaker Developers Group. Today's presenter is Robert Naud from Accolade Plus Accolade, and he will be presenting on FMHAM, which is a security module for FileMaker. Robert, please take it away.
All right, thank you very much. I'll be sharing my screen. And here we go. So you should be. Can I just get a confirmation that
Yep, looks good. We can see your
we're
screen.
seeing my screen? Okay. So I'm just going to hide this. All right, so a couple things before I dive in, if I may say. Feel free to ask questions or comment during the presentation. I think it's all the more interesting if we have people who participate and say, hey, what about this, or so on and so on. Also, today's presentation is really based on a demo file. So if some of you may have seen me last year do a presentation where it was all slides. Well, today there is no slides and only a demo file. And for anyone who wants to get their hands on this demo file, I've put a link in the chat. So just use that link and reach out and say, hey, Robert, just would like to get a copy of the demo file you used to present FMHAM, and I'll be very glad to send you a copy of this file. So very quickly about FMHAM, I have to say I am not the author. So Charles Delph is the author. I'm just a big fan of his tool. I think there are other contributors who made some contributions on the GitHub repo. So if you want to look at the original content, you can also download a copy of the tool over there. And basically, FMHAM stands for Headless Authorization Module. So it's not about authentication, but it's about what your users can do in your solution once they are authenticated. So it is headless, meaning there is no UI. It's actually also tailless, meaning it doesn't need a specific endpoint to store data. It relies on a global to do that for portability. If you want to see the data stored in a FileMaker field that you want to secure, you're free to do that. So from there, it just uses JSON to do what it's doing. And when I first looked at it, I was like, well, this is great. There's awesome potential there, but it was difficult for me to wrap my head around everything. So I put together a file just so I could expose some of the concepts and some of the features that are part of the toolkit that may not be easy to spot at first sight, given how light it is, or how light it is when we simply deploy just a couple of custom functions that make everything work. So the native version of FMHAM only supports one level of JSON, meaning your keys cannot have dots in them. So in this file, I've made some modifications to allow for support of dots and keys, but it doesn't change anything to the feature set. So it's really not mandatory to use this implementation. So what is it letting you do that could be kind of hard to do natively in FileMaker? Well, it lets you define users and define groups. And for a given group, you can set it up so that a group will inherit privileges from other groups. Okay, so you still have to watch out for circular references, but if you do your things nicely, then you have something that is otherwise difficult or impossible to achieve with FileMaker otherwise. It also lets you have users who can belong to multiple groups, not just one group. And it lets you evaluate some expressions at runtime. So a maximum, the sum of something, or even do an eval. So we'll look into this. In terms of minimum requirements, you need to have at least FileMaker 18, because one of the custom function is you making use of the while function, and that was released in 18. And so you need also a JSON object for the definition of all the groups and their respective privileges. And you need user groups, meaning a user need to be in at least one group. It cannot have no groups. So the sample file we'll be looking at is based on asset, the starter solution that comes with FileMaker. So we're going to be looking at asset records and at employee records. So our asset records are fairly straightforward. And if I go look at employees, we have a couple of them. And at the bottom, I do have, it's just a picture, it's not live or tied to any of the data, but it's simply to reflect some of the complexity that we can get into when we're trying to shape things up in terms of security and authorizations. So more often than not, this is a Venn diagram that has some complexity, and I think it's closer to what we are dealing with in real life, not something always like clean and symmetrical and so on and so on. So here we have groups that that do overlap, some groups that have no overlap at all, like in between all of A and all of E, there is no overlap. Same thing in between C and D. And if we look at the different intersection, there's perhaps about 14 of them. So if we were to say those are each user groups with their own sets of privileges, well, in FileMaker, we need to set up 14 privilege sets to assign the users to those groups. And once we've matched a user to that one group, he would be in that one group and no other group. And if we wanted to say, okay, well, I have something that is happening in AC, if I want to add something in AC, should I be adding it also to A or not? Or if I remove it from AC, should I remove it also from A? And then like you get into a bunch of maintenance that can really start getting you hunting down who is able to do what under what circumstances. And there's a ton of nested dialog windows in the security. So we're going to look at how FMHAM can let you have a different approach here for those things. Okay, so the employee record in this demo file is used. I'm sorry, to handle both privileges that would be assigned only to the user, but also to the group, okay, that this user belongs to. So if I'm making edits over here, it's just affecting the one user. If I'm making edits over here, it's affecting the whole definition of the group. Okay, so anyone who's administrator would then have access to things that are in here. So user privileges are optional, so you can totally have one of the user. I don't know if I have one in here that has nothing on the left-hand side. So yes, so Fred here has nothing, but they really need, as I said, to belong into at least one group, and the user privileges will always have the last say. They take precedence over anything that is assigned to any of the groups that the user belongs to. So when we are looking at our main groups, if I go back to our first record, so we can have things where the group will be set up to have inheritance. Okay, so in this case, administrator is inheriting from both buyers and sales staff, and the order is relevant. Okay, because if there is anything that they both can do, but have different definitions for each, then one will override the other. So just keep that in mind. And so it lets you define a set of groups, and sometimes it can be very linear, okay, for things that you want to see cascading up. For example, if you have positions that are whatever department, and then a junior role, and then defining a senior role, and then defining a lead for the whole team, or something like that, then you can easily do that. And you can assign secondary groups. So again, choosing if they are superseding or not the user's main group. So we're going to discuss that towards the end of our presentation today. Okay. So to start with, we're just going to have a quick review of our staff. Okay, so Julie here is our admin. She's able to do a bunch of things, and we can see here that I'm not only using FMHAM to determine what she can do, but I'm also determining things that I may want to query in the system from anywhere as a preference, so preference for, here we have like text size or window dimension. It could be anything you can think of, really. And so we see that she's able to have $10,000 for the asset price limit. So that's an actual value that we're putting in here. But most of the time, what we'll see is things expressed as a 1 or a 0, meaning 1 is something that the person can do. And in the fashion that in the way I've named the privileges, they're named as if you were to say at the end, like, is allowed. Okay, so employee delete is allowed, 1 for yes, and 0 for no. And 0 is the default value if you're not if you do not have the privilege. But here we have something here that is called not for admin set to 0, because as we saw, the group is inheriting from buyers and sales staff, and those groups probably have the not for admin set to 1. So at the administrator level, I want to be sure that I'm overriding whatever is coming from the groups who are inheriting from for this one feature. So if we then have a quick look at other records, here we have Samantha, and she's one of our buyers. And we have a buyer asset price limit set to 2,500, but in her case, she must be perhaps our senior buyer, because we opted to increase that limit to 5,000, a little bit over $5,000. And if we keep going and look at Eric, Eric is involved into sales, and he does not have, he does have asset edit, but not a price limit. And if we look at Jeffrey, Jeffrey is also a buyer, but his asset price limit is set to 1,000. So maybe he's one of our recent hires. And we have Fred. Fred is belonging to a group that is corporate, and that group is inheriting from East, West, and Central. So that's a different pattern for inheritance, and we're going to see how that may be slightly different. When I say different, meaning it's not linear, like what I described with something that would be junior, senior, and lead, or say if you have a vertical solution with paid plans and things like that, well, you could say, okay, I have my bronze, silver, and gold offering, or premium and whatnot you want to call them. But so so in here we have different groups that are more tied to geographies, and we'll see how that can have some challenges that FMHAM is letting us tackle very well. And then we have Romeo, and Romeo is simply, I'm going to say, a user that I rely on simply because if I want to look at the contents of any given group without altering the group of one of the other users is belonging to, in because I use them in the demo, then I'll be coming to Romeo's record, and I'll be flipping from one group to the other to explore the contents of the group, because there is no dedicated UI for just looking at the group definitions. So let's do some quick tests with what we've got here. Okay, so we're gonna go look at Eric, and we're gonna log in as Eric, and we're gonna go to our asset. So here we have our asset record, and we want to see that Eric cannot edit the price. Okay, so if I just come in here and set this to 1, I do get a message, and in this case, it's a custom dialog. So it tells us that there is a script trigger that kicked in. Okay, and it tells me, okay, your profile does not allow you to modify this value. I also happen to have the exact same field over here without a script trigger on it. And in this case, if I make the same edit and I do this, then what I get is not a custom dialog, it's a validation dialog. And for validations, we don't get to really calculate the message that we are showing the user on the fly. But still, we could possibly put some text in here that would be relevant and indicate to the user why the validation is failing. And some people will tell me, well, validation is not security, but for our purposes today, I'm going to say that's close enough. You know, if you may choose to use it or you may choose not to use it, that's up to you. This is simply to demonstrate the different things that that can be done with the tool. Okay, so so to get out of this, I have to revert my my record. So I'll be reverting it, and here we're back to our original amount. Now, if we go and log in as Jeffrey, we see that Jeffrey has an asset price limit of 1,000. So I'm just relog in, going to assets. So over here, if I try to do the same edit, now I get a message, but the text is different. Okay, it still is my show custom, but it now says that this exceeds the amount I can set for the asset. If I go and make that same edit in the field that has just the validation and no trigger, it gives me the same error message. And if I say, okay, well, there's one too many 9s in there, then this goes through. And same thing, if I want to make that 995 instead, that also goes through, because both of those values are under the limit that we have set for Jeffrey. So now let's log in as our admin and see what happens when we're logged in with a user who is full access. So just to make sure that we are full access over here, I can get to the manage database dialog. So we're really full access right now. And if I go in here, if I say something like this, no surprise, that's going to go through. But if I say something like this, I now get this exceeds the amount you can set for an asset, because script triggers will run for everyone, regardless if you are full access or not. It just runs, so we're back to our original value. And if I again take this and do something like that, then again, I get the error, and I can now revert the record, because validation also applied to everyone, regardless of are you full access or not. So I'm just going to revert out of this and say, okay, I think the price limit that we had was 10,000. So I'll just set it to 9,000 something. And now let's have a look quickly at what we have under the hood. If I just look at the script and the field validation. So for our trigger, the script is pretty simple, really. We just have something where we're calling on fmham. So this is the custom function that comes with fmham, and you're sending in the privilege that you're checking against and any options. So if you have, say, an encryption key or things like that, that's where you would be putting this. So here we're saying, okay, if you're not allowed to edit the asset price, then you should receive a message that tells you so. And if that goes through, then we're still checking, okay, is the asset price greater than the asset price limit that we have set for that that user or that user group, and in which case we give a different message. And if everything is fine, then we just get out and everything proceeds. And here we're choosing to reverting the record. You could do something else. It's not about how you implement those things. It's really just to let you know that you can use the calculation to enforce whatever you feel like enforcing. To some people, they'll say, well, I'm not going to script this way. I'm going to use it for something else. You can use it to do hide conditions, or really anywhere there is a calculation dialog, then you can plug this in and have it do something for you. So so that's what we have here. And if we look quickly at our validation on the price, then what we have here is going to say, validation. Let's look at our calculation. So the calculation is really similar to what we saw. It's combining being certain that our price is less than the price limit that the user has, and that the user is also able to edit the asset in the first place. So if any of this fails, then we get the error message, and then you should just make sure that you come up with some text here that will remain useful regardless of how this validation error was triggered. So there is one more thing I want to show. If I quickly relog in as Fred this time, okay, because Fred doesn't have any privileges that let him edit the asset in the first place. So now if I go to our asset with Fred and I say, okay, let's try to change what we have here. Just as I type, now I'm getting not a validation error message. This is an error message that is coming straight from FileMaker security, and it tells me that I simply don't have the right privileges to do this. So again, I'm just gonna re-log in with the full access account so that we can go have a look at how that is taking place. And if I go look at our assets table, basically in all the tables for the system, I'm having just a couple fields that are called like record edit is allowed and record delete is allowed. And you can name them however you feel. And the check that we have in there, they're unstored calculation. And it simply says, okay, we're going to do a check using ham, and we're going to set for, in this case, asset edit. And for delete, no surprise, we're checking for asset delete. And once we know that this is here, we can go have a look at our security. And what we see in security is that, well, obviously our full access account is full access, but everyone else shares the exact same privilege set than anyone or than everyone, and the privilege set is actually called everyone. So if I go look at the settings for that privilege set, what we're going to see is that things are done in a way where record access is customized. And the way we've done this, there's no limitation on view. There's no limitation on create and not any on field access, but for editing records on assets and deleting records, um, it is enforced with a calculation, and the calculation simply is referring to our field. Okay, and because it's the field that is coming right from the table that we're in, we don't need to have any reference to a table occurrence or anything like that. So, and because that same field exists with the same name in all the tables, in terms of setup, I can simply copy this and then come here and go to other tables and then just paste the value over, and then boom, 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 be done with all my edits. And same thing for the deletes. Do something like this and have that be taken care of. And then I tried not to come back in here because, like I said, like it's the kind of dialogue that has 1, 2, 3, 4 level of nesting into different windows. So the less often I have to come in here, the happier I am. So for why is it we're not using calculations on other elements? Well, for field access, really, once you say limited, you're not getting a calculation. You're getting like options that you can edit with a radio button that pretty much just says, okay, you can hard code things field by field. So that's really not something that a calculation will play nicely with. Create, if it was possible to use a calculation in here, I would be using it. It just so happens that that's not how it's been designed, perhaps because when it was first put together, the thinking was that you'd have to rely on a field from the very record in the table you're in. And since we're talking about creating a record, well, it couldn't be coming from the same table or the same record, so they didn't opt to put that in. But if it was in, I would be using it. And for view, you could use it. It's just in terms of performance, anything that relies on this. And the same thing, if you have bulk edits or bulk deletes, having this being performed on something like that does not have by default access, like the server is going to have to check for every single record. Oh, can the user do what is to be done here, yes or no, before it carries on that action. So you have to keep that in mind. And with view, I mean, anything that you're showing in list view portals, or if you're doing find requests, then it becomes really, again, like I said, a performance issue. So you want to look into those things. So I'm just going to cancel out of that set up for now, unless we have any questions while we are here. So I'll assume that means there are no questions.
My question is like, I know it's not here, is
Mhm.
how do you interact the different groups? Do you have a, what in the group table you have the different interaction that you show us, like you say corporation, like, from the corporation, there are some privileges that you set up, and then after that you have like ways. Can you show me how that thing is designed? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. So basically, the UI we have here is
Mm-hmm.
simply to let us. If I bring the data viewer, okay,
Okay.
we're gonna see. Okay, guess I flushed a bunch of things here. So there is a global that I have in here, and if I do a JSON format for this, okay, so it lets me build this JSON object,
Oh,
okay,
okay.
at login, and this defines for administrators what is it they can do. So admins, they can do um, uh, asset price limit, they have that at 10,000, and then for employee they're able to delete, and for employee privileges they're able to create, delete, and edit, and so on and so on. And I see here that they inherit from buyers and from sales staff. And buyers, what is it they can do? They can do those
Oh, okay.
things, and so on and so on. So basically, the view we have here is simply a UI to let me get to that JSON. Okay. So for any group, if I want to add something and say, oh, now they can do this instead, I want to grant them, I don't know, group delete, then I put it in, and I say, okay, yes,
Mhm.
it's set to 1, or no, you can't, or things like that. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just gonna remove this, and then so we're going to look at cases where we need to use some max and eval. So there's a lot of scenarios where group inheritance by itself will let us achieve what we need. Like I said, for a vertical solution where you have things like a light plan, a pro plan, and an ultimate plan, and things like that. That's very linear. You can just say, oh, everything from the level under plus this. But like I said, for our friend Fred, who is in a group that is called corporate, he inherits from east, west, and central. And we're just going to have a look at our different groups. Basically, east, west, and central, they are not they're not stacking really. They have um, the same privileges, but not the same values for all of those privileges. Okay, so if we look at, well, East is the one selected right now, we see that we have an asset price limit set to 1,000. Okay, we have other stuff set to 2 and other thing set to 13. Okay, if I look at Central, I have 1 for all of those values. And if I look at West, okay, I have 100 for the price limit, and then 3 for other stuff, and then other thing being set to 1,000. Okay, so in between East, West, and Central, if I want to stack them in any order that makes it so I'm getting the maximum price limit of all 3 groups, but also for other thing that I'm getting the maximum, there is no stacking order that by itself is gonna give me that, because if I put west last, then yes, I'm gonna be winning on the 1,000 for other thing, but this the 100 over here is going to uh, overwrite the 1,000 that is from east. And if I put east last, it's just the same thing, but the other way around. We're going to get 1,000 for the price limit, but we're going to get 13, I think, for the other thing. So by changing our keys, okay, how they're defined, to have a suffix of underscore max and underscore sum, okay, it lets FMHAM figure out that it has to basically put those things together and say, okay, then I'll take everything and then I'll give you the largest value, or I'll give you the sum of all the values. Okay, so if we go in as Fred, and if I log in as Fred, okay, we're gonna do we're gonna bring the data viewer, okay, and then just say admin. So we have our ham config and $flat. So $flat is really just a courtesy variable. You don't need it. Ham config is what the module uses for storage, and as I said, if you don't want to use that, you can put that into a field. So for now, I'm just gonna add that to my watch, and I'm going to look at what we have in here. And what we have is an asset price limit set to 1,000, and then other stuff set to 6, because we had a value of 1, 2, and 3, and when we do the sum of 1, 2, and 3 together, it sums up to 6. And for other thing, we also have the max of all of our 3 groups. So basically, Fred, once we've performed the login, FMHAM has said, okay, this is everything that that Fred gets to do, and here is the information we have about it. Okay, so when we saw that I was using a custom function that that would check for the privilege, what it's checking against is this here. Okay, so, or this is a pretty print version of it, but it's the data that it is using. Okay, so, and we see that there is also rolling credits at eval over here. Okay, and basically for that, what we have is, okay, day get current date times 100. Okay, so if I do a new expression here, and I say ham check privilege for rolling credits, because the underscore eval is there as the suffix of how the rolling credits key has been defined, it is it's going to actually run the eval of whatever calculation we've put in there. So 100 times today's date, we're on the 5th, so it gives out 500. You know, so if you have credits that add up every day up until the end of the month, and then the reset or things like that, you can use this for something like that. If you want to say that Fred can run a report on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but not Tuesday and not Thursday, you can, as long as you can come up with the calculation for it, you're good to go. So, and we saw that the FMHAM stores the text in here, so that means every time we're asking for it, that is getting evaluated. There is, again, options on how we set this, so that if we wanted for it to be calculated only at the time of the setup, then it would do so only at the time of the setup, and if we choose for that to be the case, then the data viewer would show us, sorry, the data viewer would show us something here where instead of having the actual calculation, it would show 500 right there. So we've looked at how we have those options, and to note is that the suffix goes when you define the key for the privilege, but when you are calling the privilege from the custom function, you don't need to use the suffix, because technically you could have a matching key that doesn't use the suffix, and you would want to just be able to call it by that key, not have to remember, oh, is there or is there not a suffix for this key. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about users with multiple groups. If I go and I think I'm gonna relog in as Julie for now. So inheritance is great, but sometimes it's not necessarily going to let you achieve everything you need to achieve. And having a user belong to more than one group can really be helpful, because sometimes, say there is this new hire and you're told, oh, you know what, Sam is going to be helping the folks in sales, but he's also going to be helping the folks in accounting. Can you make it so that he gets access to everything that he needs to have access to? Well, again, traditionally, because a given user can only belong in one group, you'd be bound to like craft a new group where perhaps he would be the only employee in there, and then say, okay, let's make sure that I get all of the authorizations from accounting and all of the authorization from sales, and bind that together into this one group. And again, with maintenance, like if there is something that you grant to sales, you have to remember, oh, wait, I need to add it to my other group that is merging the two, and so on and so on. So that's kind of tricky. And something else that it can help with is if you have people going on vacation and they are filling in for someone else, then you can easily make them a member of multiple groups, and then whenever the vacation time of that person is over and she's back, then you can simply remove the group from the user who was doing was backfilling for that other user. So you don't get people doing stuff like sharing their credentials or things like that. So and if we look at how it's done with FMHAM, so you remember how we had something here where we said you can have additional groups, okay, and this could be it can be a list, and I'm actually going to go into Eric, okay. So for any groups that will be superseding the user's main group of in this case sales staff, and over here you can define the groups that are superseded by the user's main group. And here we see that I opted to add the same group 3 times. Okay, so we're going to look into that also. I'll have a look at the definition of that group. So if we think of the example I was giving with people going on vacation, okay, let's take an example that that is far-fetched, but let's just say we have a school and we have the principal, and we have the janitor, and each of them are going on vacation and backfilling for one another. So if over here my user is set to be the principal, okay, so if the janitor goes on vacation, chances are I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to add the janitor group to this user, but my user's main group is still going to supersede the janitor one. Okay, meaning if there is anything in the group's definition for those two groups, I want my principal group definition to win over anything that is defined at the janitor level. Okay, and same thing if we were saying, well, now Eric is now standing for our janitor. Okay, so over here I would be having the janitor group, and then I'd be backfilling for the principal. Well, chances are I would want to say, okay, well, if there is anything that that is conflicting in between the janitor role and the principal, well, because Eric is backfilling for the principal, I don't want his original group to restrict him. I want him to really have things where the principal role is going to win over his main group. Okay, so you can do this like that. And what I said I'd look into the why I've granted someone like this group 3 times. So if we go have a quick look at that bundle, special bundle ABC, so it has the bundle thing and it's defined as a sum and it's set to 25. Okay, so again, if we're thinking of perhaps a vertical solution, okay, where you have your plans, but on top of the plans that you have, there is something that you are selling as an add-on, you know, that it could be sending SMS messages, it could be anything, okay? So here, if I log in as Eric, okay, and I bring my data viewer again, okay, we're going to see in here that my bundle thing, because it was set to bundle thing underscore sum, and he belongs in the group 3 times, so it adds up to 75. So there's a lot of flexibility that you get from things like that. That would be very hard to achieve in any other way that I can think of. So, and you see that in the groups that I have here, that I have here, I've made the choice to add the disabled features group to everyone in my solution. Okay, so that lets me define features in that group, you know, and say, okay, well, disabled features. Look, I need to relog in because I can't change someone's group if I'm not having the right access. So if I look at the disabled features, so I can say, okay, well, I'm going to be releasing more stuff, you know, but for now I'm going to set it to 0. So it's going to prevent anyone from having. I can actually go into the groups and grant it to the groups that need to have it, but because it's standing here as 0, then it's not going to work for anyone up until I remove this from here. Okay, and I would really remove it because if I set this to 1, then it would be de facto granting the feature to everyone because that group is active for everyone in the system. So I don't want to do that. Another example is for new stuff here, and I've defined a calculation based on timestamp. So you could say, hey, I'm going to take this and it's going to become live for everyone at Monday 9 a.m. on February 7th. Okay, so again, this here, if it resolves to 0, it's going to make so it's not available to anyone. And if it resolves to 1, it's going to make it available to everyone. So it's not every single feature that you're going to give access to everyone, but sometimes there are those features, and you could very well do that. And you could also define a different group that would be called developer, and add it to your user, that would, in a way that the developer group would supersede disable feature. Or you could have your developer user and grant new stuff and grant more stuff, those keys to that one user that you're using to do the development and to test, or to grant it for someone who would need to test the feature you've developed, or so on and so on. Again, there's really a bunch of things you can do. It's really your imagination that lets you determine where you want to go with this. So so we've talked about using multiple groups for a given user when people go on vacation, with the same group many times if we have a bundle. We've talked about disabled features. So yeah, basically, if you are using something where for your keys, you're using something that has dots in the keys, just keep in mind that as you define them, you don't want to have anything where one of your key would be a substring of another key, because that would result into invalid JSON. Okay.
Robert,
yes.
I just is this type of privileged methodology or system that you have been using is only for one corporation, or it will be a possible like several corporations within this database will be able to use this?
When you say corporations, I'm not sure that I'm following you.
Let's say that we are marketing a product, and the and I want everybody to be able to access this from different companies. Do you know what I mean? So have you done anything like this with this, or?
I have not done something like what you've described, meaning you'd have, what you're talking about is like multi-tenancy into a single file. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes. So technically, in that case, I think you have to have something in place that will make sure that given users can only access a set of data that is tied to data ownership. Okay. This here is not really talking about data ownership. This is really about what you can and cannot do in the system, and letting you define privileges. So technically, I guess you could take this and put it on top of something to handle multi-tenancy. You know, you could say, okay, I'm gonna make it so that for instance, employee privilege edit is not set to 1. It's going to be, it would need to be like underscore eval or something like that. And then you'd say, okay, well, if the employee creator or whatever is so and so, then as long as you're part of the group that needs to, part of the corporation that you said, you know, that needs to access this, then you, yes, you get to edit. Then yeah, you'd be good to go. But I'm not sure it's where something like this shines. But you could do that. And again, in the field that I'm using here, where I said say assets, okay, where we have edit is allowed, this right now this is my whole calculation, but you could very well say and then put anything in there. It's really what it resolves to. Okay, so that's going to matter. So, and in fact, if I look at the privilege assignments that I have in here, record edit is allowed is actually a bit more fancy than what I have in just the assets table, because I'm checking, okay, am I editing something that is tied to group name, or am I editing something that is tied to account name? And based on each, then I'm checking for a different privilege. So so yeah, you can do those kind of things. I don't have a setup here that is meant to handle corporations and ownership of data, but you'd be able to go there. It's just, again, like I said, if you have something like multi-tenancy, chances are you're going to want to have something into your security that really restricts not only edits and deletes, but also stuff like I'm sorry, stuff like view, and I think that is not performing all that great. So um, so anyway, so there are different discussions that this can lead us into, preferences as to multi-tenancy versus single tenancy, and especially with the data migration tool, there are things that you can do that make it so maybe you don't need to have everything into a single file. So it's just that at that point it's a different discussion. So was I answering your question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Very good. So I want to look at a couple things now that we've discussed. Okay, well, here is what it can do, but what do I need if I want to roll this out into a solution that I've got? So basically, there's a couple scripts and a couple of custom functions. So before I go look at the custom functions, I just want to give credit where credit is due. So Charles Delph made FMHAM, and the original code can be found here. And I've relied on a custom function that has been published by Steve SSH to make sure that this version of FMHAM can use dots in the keys. So again, thanks for those people and making all of this possible. So if we look at the custom functions, we have 3 items that are really native for ham. So ham config, okay, ham check privilege, and ham utility. So config is really where you're sending in, here's all the groups, here's my user, and here are any options, like I said, encryption or things like that. Check privilege, we saw how we were using it in the system, and utility is again simply functions that make sure that both of these are working. Flatten JSON object is something that I am using to make the dots in the keys possible. It is the custom function from Steve SSH, but FMHAM by itself doesn't need that. And FMList to JSON array is for everything that I have in the system that is taking lists as inputs, like carriage return delimited list, like say the list of groups to define inheritance, or the list of groups when you want to add your user into multiple groups, then that gets translated to a JSON array using this custom function here, but you don't need it for FMHAM to work. So yeah, then on first window open, we have something where we grab the information from all the groups and populate the global field that I showed you that had all of the JSON objects for every single groups, and it needs to have every single groups because if there is inheritance, you can't simply tell FMHAM, oh, here's the group I belong in, because it needs to be able to follow and say, oh, it inherits from this, then I also need that definition, and so it needs every definition to be able to resolve one given group. And if we look at ham setup, then in this case, I'm doing something to retrieve information from the user and see, okay, what is exclusive to that user in terms of privilege. But once that is done, we look for the groups. Okay, so is there a single group or more than one group? And if there is a single group, then the group is simply a string. If there is more than one group, the group is a JSON array. And then the magic happens here. We have ham config, and basically we're sending in, like I said, all of our JSON definition for all of the groups, and then we're sending in our user. So what group does the user belongs to, and are there any user-specific authorization for this one user? And then options would be, like I said, encryption key or defaults or things like that. So that's it. And over here, we're raising $$ flat. It's really not something that needs to be there. You can completely deactivate it. And FMHAM does have a couple things that uses in terms of globals, like we see $$ ham last error if there are errors, and we also saw in the data viewer that there is there is ham config that is being used, and if you fear that relying on a global variable would not be secure, then you can go into the custom function for, I think it's I have to check if it's ham config or if it's ham check privilege, but basically so here you'd swap ham config for whatever secure storage you have. If it's a global field that is secured or things like that, and as you run the setup, then instead of just having the config raise that variable, you need to have the output of that being set to your field in however way you feel, again, that this would be secure. So that's it really. So that FMHAM in a nutshell, if I may say. So if there's any questions, and again, as a reminder, anyone who wants to get a copy of this demo file, I think there's a link in the chat to my website, and so simply fill in the contact form and say, hey, Robert, I would like a copy, and I'll be sure to send that your way.
Okay.
It's a very interesting talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I like that a lot. Yeah, security is really hard in FileMaker, and doing kind of nested groups like this is something that's challenging to do on your own.
Yeah, nesting the groups is really what got me sold onto FMHAM. And once I started scratching the surface and I saw everything else that it could do, I was simply even more thrilled. So that's that.
Yeah, it's really great.
I'm just trying to see. I guess I have to find the window back of where it is I am sharing my screen from. So this one.
Yep.
All right. So I'll stop presenting. And But if we want to keep the discussion going, or I don't know, I didn't really pay close attention to time. Sorry about that if I went over or anything.
That's okay. We're fine. It's just a couple minutes past 8, so that's pretty good. Did anyone else have any other questions in here?
Nope.
No. Okay.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that was really great. Thank you very much. I just want to remind everyone that we meet on the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're always looking for presenters or topics. If you have something you'd like to share, please let me know. You can email me, david@bluefeathergroup.com. If you have a topic that you'd like to hear about, and just be like, hey, I haven't heard about this, or I want to know more about this, let me know, and we'll try to find a presenter who is knowledgeable on that topic. Yeah, contributions for meeting topics are very, very welcome.
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. Thanks again, Robert. That was really great. And hopefully we'll get you to present another time in the future as well.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.